Well, good Monday morning to you. Welcome to our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. I'm your host, Jim Tabor, along with Dr. Jim and Janine Fox of Doctor's Nutrition, located on Callan Lorraine Road in Gulfport, just south of Pass Road. We do this every Monday morning. It is a live call-in show, and we invite you to call in and ask questions regarding our topic or anything regarding your health, because what the show is all about, trying to help you live a healthier lifestyle.
Yes.
Phone lines are 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. We promise not to put you on the air, just pass the question along to our producer and they'll pass it along to us. Well, something that is inevitable in everybody's life is getting older, aging.
Yes.
And so what we're actually talking about today is not so much aging as it is anti-aging.
Right. Exactly.
Trying to keep that young look.
Well, just being able to live longer.
Without going through what, who's the comedian did? They got all the facial surgery. Kenny Rogers did it too. I can't remember the other one, but
and natural anti-aging is what we're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And when you talk about anti-aging, you have to really, it's about longevity.
Right.
I mean, and it's being healthy as you get older.
Right.
And the thing is I mean, aging is inevitable, and everybody knows that. And you want to actually age, you just want to be healthy as long as you can, and you want to look and feel good. So that is kind of what we're going to be talking about, and we're actually going to have kind of a few parts to this. We're going to talk about just generalized anti-aging today, and then next week we're going to talk more about skin. So because skin is a big part of looking better and aging well appearance-wise. And then the next week we're going to be doing a show on the mitochondria, which is definitely the big thing on if your mitochondria is not healthy, and then you're going to age. So the next 3 weeks, we're going to actually be talking about anti-aging and longevity.
Longevity, that's the big thing, is being able to live longer than, they give you an average now of what I think males are 78 or something like that. And females might be a little bit longer than that. But needless to say, there's a lot of research out there that's been done in various institutions around the country, starting with Harvard and places like that, that show that they can take mice, for instance, and make them live 25 to even 30% longer. Yeah. And by doing certain things, keeping them healthy. And because you have to be healthy to live longer. That's just
exactly
all there is
right.
to it.
So it's not just so much, talking about anti-aging, people think about, okay, we're talking about the skin, and which, like you said, we'll talk about next week.
We're going to do that.
But a lot of it starts inside.
Yes, staying healthy actually helps longevity. So that's the big thing, is to stay healthy and don't wait until something happens.
Right.
Like we're always saying, prevention's a big part of anti-aging and longevity. Prevent things from happening. Don't wait until you get it. So that does make a big difference. And there's a lot of things you can do. And like I said, we always, diet is probably where you start. What you put in your body does make a difference on what you get. It really does.
There's no doubt, the one thing that probably boils down to, and after years and years and years of studying these things, there was one of the scientists, I think it was at Harvard, said that, really comes down to one thing. The one thing that has shown on every organism they've tried it on, from single cells to, mice to whatever. The one thing that has proved to increase longevity is caloric restriction, eating less. And that's probably one of the biggest issues we have in America today, is eating less.
Right. And probably the worst you can do for aging is be an obese diabetic smoker.
Right.
That's probably, honestly, the worst things you can do to actually make you live longer.
Yeah.
And diabetes, we know, is huge, on the rise. We're in one of the worst states in the country for diabetes. And diabetics, that's one way to not be healthy, is to be diabetic. So, and then you definitely can actually change type 2 diabetes by changing your diet. We see it all the time. We see it every day. And people can't believe they can actually reverse things and make their numbers so much better and all kind of just from eating different. But it is. And no matter what the condition, what the health problem is, nowadays, all the research points to sugar's not good for it.
Right.
Well, it's pro-inflammatory, which means it causes inflammation. Okay, that's the issue. And everybody says, well, and you hear this a lot, it's a myth about, well, you know, our body's designed to run on carbohydrates and sugars. No, it's not. If you get down into the actual physiology of it, really and truly, we're not designed just to run on carbohydrates. Actually, carbohydrates, large amounts of carbohydrates in the diet is a modern thing. And modern times have shown us that, yeah, we can actually shorten the lifespan when we get to more of the simple carbohydrates like sugar. Sugar's a carbohydrate. And when we get to more of those simple carbohydrates, yeah, it causes inflammation, and inflammation causes other disease. And there's been, you know, you can look it up. There's been a lot of people that in the science field, medicine even, that have said that all disease starts with inflammation.
Yep.
Runaway inflammation. There's no doubt about it. And when it gets just runaway inflammation, you're going to have a disease process. That's all that can follow. Yeah.
Yeah, and all these people that think about, well, I'll eat foods with preservatives in them. That'll help me
all
out.
the chemicals and preservatives don't really help either.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no doubt. Now,
They might preserve the food, but they don't preserve you.
a lot of the research on the caloric restriction. Now, it's really hard to do some of the ways they've looked at
Right.
caloric restriction. It is. I mean, when you look at it, it is. I mean, they're talking about real caloric restriction.
Yeah, they're talking about, yeah.
But recently, which I say recently, in the past probably 15, 20 years, I guess, 10 years, intermittent fasting has been shown to mimic caloric restriction when it comes to longevity. So that's another thing we've talked about on a few shows in the past is about that, and that is something that is easier to do. And yes, you don't want to overeat. We're not saying that. But that caloric restriction is real hard. It really is.
The way they do it, yeah, you know,
It is.
It is extremely hard, and we don't think you necessarily have to go that hardcore.
Right.
But definitely something like the intermittent fasting. You know, everybody has always been told all your life, and I promise you, I was, and you probably were too. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It is, but breakfast could be at noon. It's
Right.
just breaking the fast.
Right.
I've
That's
done
what
breakfast plenty
means.
of times for dinner.
Yeah. You know,
Well,
so-
breakfast is just breaking your fast. And so it can be at noon. And people just tend to eat too often and too much. And
Yeah.
that definitely isn't good for you in the long run. I feel terrible when I eat all day long. And I don't do it. Well, I don't rarely. Well, we've had company and they want to eat every time you turn around. I'm like, I can't do this.
Wow.
I can't eat that much.
All right, 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. Our phone lines are open to you. We're talking about anti-aging this morning, so if you have any questions about that or anything regarding health issues, pick up the phone and give us a call. We're going to take a break and we'll be back in just a moment. And welcome back to our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. We're talking about anti-aging this morning, and someone called in with a question: how can you lower your insulin?
Getting away from carbohydrates. The more
Yep.
simple the carbohydrate, the more insulin response you're going to get. For instance, table sugar, bad insulin producer. Broccoli, yeah, a little slow, but it comes on. But it's a more complex carbohydrate. So just staying away from the.
And when it comes to
carbohydrates.
insulin is very damaging to the body.
Very.
And I mean, you have to have it, something you have to have to live. So we should say that because you got to control your sugar. But over insulin and too much insulin has been shown to damage cells and definitely cause more aging. And also, when like I said, come to insulin, a low glycemic diet is what we recommend for insulin. Also, there is actually something called berberine. And berberine's been shown to actually help the insulin response as well. So we do use the berberine. We have a product called Berberine Max that actually can help with insulin, but you're never going to control the spikes of insulin if you don't change your diet.
Correct.
Yep.
That's correct.
All right.
Yep.
Another question: can you talk more about fasting? Best time to fast? How long to fast?
Well, what they show, fasting is real simple. You just don't eat food. Now you take water and things like that, teas, whatever. But when you start talking about caloric intake, you stop that. And typically what most of the intermittent fasting is doing, they'll start gradually and kind of work into this because you get your body adapted to it. But typically you'd want to stop eating, say 7 o'clock or so at night, and then you go from that till 7 in the morning. Now that's 12 hours. All right, then if you can go another 5 hours, right, or 4 hours, you're up to that 16 hours or better or more. And up around noon, 11 to noon, time to eat the first meal.
Yeah, don't gorge yourself when you eat
intermittent,
that meal.
intermittent fasting, there's a lot of different ways you can do it.
There are.
But the way that we like is to get to where you eat all your food in 6 hours of the day.
Yeah.
And that really isn't hard. and that's what we do mostly. You know, there might be a day where you get off a little later and it makes a difference, maybe at 7 hours. But say you eat your first meal, your breakfast, at noon, and then you stop eating by 6. That would be eating all your food in 6 hours a day. And that's what I find to be beneficial in people. Now, like we said, a lot of times you start with a little bit longer and then slowly adapt, because you don't want to be starving to death and then eat everything you see. And then you get to where you're not hungry. I mean, that's what everybody says. Oh my gosh, I get to where I'm not near as hungry, because you're not spiking the insulin.
Yeah.
That's the one bad thing about spiking the insulin. And you eat the wrong foods and you spike that insulin, it makes you hungry. So there's a lot of things that actually make you hungry, and insulin is one of them.
It's the biggest. You know, there's two primary. The insulin is one of the primary hormones made from the pancreas, and so is one called glucagon. And glucagon, they work opposite of each other. If insulin's real high, glucagon's real low. Now, okay, insulin tries to store fat. I mean, that's its job. It's either going to get that sugar into the cell where you can use it for fuel, or it's going to store it as fat. And the glucagon comes in when you're fasting. It opens up some of that stored fat and releases it so you can have energy. So you want to be in a state where your body can use the glucagon and actually use some of that stored fat. But if you're constantly eating sugar or something that's got carbohydrates in it, then you're constantly producing that insulin, and and that's when everybody becomes insulin resistant. It's something that 30 years ago wasn't even heard of. You didn't even had no idea, no concept of it. Now everybody talks about insulin resistance, and it's definitely a real problem in medicine. That's for sure.
I think that says SIBO.
Yeah, I was trying to look at the light was kind of bright on my eyes here. I have SIBO, SIBO,
Yep, SIBO.
And I was wondering how to go about treating it.
We actually have a protocol, a SIBO protocol, where you alternate kill phase and then restore phase, because basically you want to kill off, it's the small intestine bacterial overgrowth is what that stands for. And so you have a phase where you kill off the bacteria, and we use, of course, natural products. And then you have another phase where you actually restore all your good bacteria and you actually build it back up, and you do a few different phases of that. So, and there's different products that you can use for it. We have a couple different protocols that we can use. So if you just call our office, we'll tell you specifically, because that definitely causes a lot of stomach issues.
It really does, you know, and because the small intestine, everybody thinks, well, our gut's just got all this bacteria in it. Well, our small intestine, which is about 20-something feet in the average adult, really doesn't have a big inhabitation of bacteria. Most of the colonization of the probiotics, if you will, are in the large intestine. So when that stuff gets started growing and taking up space in the small intestine, for one, they're inhibiting the absorption of food, because that's where most of the digestive process is actually taking place. And if the small intestine can't digest it properly, sorry, you're not getting the good out of it. So SIBO can be a real problem. There's no doubt about it.
And when you talk about health and anti-aging, it all starts in the digestive tract.
Right.
And they do know. I mean, gut health plays a big role in everything, especially brain health.
Right.
And that's the one big thing as you age, is you want your brain to stay good.
Right.
I mean, you don't want just your body to still be there and you don't know, your brain be bad.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that can actually affect the brain function, a lot of things. And one of the studies, and we've talked about it before on previous shows, but I think it is a big part of anti-aging, is that the study that was done where they took a group of people that had normal B12 levels. And it was actually a pretty big study. So there was actually quite a few people that they did this to. Then they did MRIs. And they said, okay, let's correlate what we're finding with the B12 levels in the MRI. And what they showed is people on the low end of B12, their brain was shrinking.
Faster. Yeah.
Yes, and it wasn't associated with the age as much as it was the B12 level. Now, they did it in people over, I think, 50, so they didn't do it in 18-year-olds. But they definitely showed that if you were on the high end of the B12 range, your brain was not shrinking as much. So that makes a big difference. When you start talking about longevity and anti-aging, you want your brain to actually be healthy.
Right.
And so that's a big one, is the B vitamins.
But the B vitamins, and the other thing is good fats. This is, we've been bombarded for the past 20 or 30 years or more about low fat, no fat, no fat, no fat, And when you do that, the brain is mostly fat, folks. I got news for you. So if you don't get in the right kind of fats, especially the omega-3s, real hard to get in the American diet. Things like walnuts have a lot of omega-3s in them. The right kind of fish, the deep water fish and so on, have a lot of that. So things like that people just don't eat. And I mean, they really don't eat. And when they don't, your brain's not got the fuel.
Those are all anti-aging foods.
Right.
If you look at what are the best anti-aging foods, it'll be your fish and your nuts and and all your bright colors.
Yes.
The bright colors and get the antioxidants and stuff. But also, honestly, good fat. All your good fat is good for
avocados.
Avocados are good.
Great. I know our morning anchor, Jamie Doris, that's what she has for
breakfast.
Lunch. That's what she has. She has an avocado.
Organic, grass-fed beef. They always say, "Oh, stay away from red meat. Stay away from red meat." Well, if it's not the right kind, yes. I mean, again, you don't want an abundance of it, but it has a lot of benefits and really good protein.
All right. We have another question. We're going to get to that in just a moment, but we're going to take our final break here and come back with that question and this week's special. And welcome back. It's our final segment of this morning's Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. We're talking about anti-aging. So if you have any questions, pick up the phone, give us a call, 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. Question called in, is it a fact that insulin damages blood vessels as it travels throughout the body?
It can. It interacts with something called the vascular endothelium, the lining of the smooth lining of the muscle of the vessels, blood vessels, arteries, veins, and so on. So it can. And it can cause all kind of, it's known that high insulin, for instance, in the young females, it causes the PCOS. It's always involved. And the guys, come on, if it does the PCOS in the females, what do you think it's doing to the testosterone in guys?
One reason why there is a big epidemic in low testosterone in young men, and we do see that because of how much insulin they have because of the way they eat. So it does make a difference the way you eat. One thing about insulin that for years I have heard from some of the type 1 diabetics or diabetics on insulin that actually their doctors tell them, eat what you want and take more insulin. And that makes me cringe. I mean, it was like when I hear that, it's like, oh my gosh, talk about killing someone fast. Just taking huge amounts of insulin and eating what you want. That's not a good idea. So I just wanted to add that because we do hear that.
We hear it a lot.
We do hear that a lot. And that is a horrible advice to take.
From an anti-aging standpoint, it's the worst thing you can do.
It is.
Because we want to keep that insulin response, and then if you're a type 1, you have to inject the insulin. So you want to keep that as low as you possibly have to. And the best way to do that is eating fats that don't require a lot of insulin, like your proteins and fats. And excessive protein's not necessarily good. High fat, and a lot of people, you look at the keto diet, we don't push the keto diet particularly. Some people get real hung up on keto, and I don't think that's the healthiest way to go.
Because when you do cheat on the keto diet, it floods the system with insulin, and that does cause problems in the endothelial lining. So that's one reason. I mean, somebody that is strict on keto, that's one thing, but most people are going to cheat occasionally, and it's not good to cheat on keto. So I mean, that's why if you do more of something that you can live with, it's got to be a lifestyle change that you can live with, and if you want to live healthier and longer, that's what you have to do. All
right. Let's go ahead and look at this week's special, resveratrol.
Well, resveratrol is one that a lot of people have heard about, and a lot of people associate it with drinking red wine. And there is a smidgen, and I will underline smidgen, of resveratrol in red wine. It's hard to drink enough red wine and stay straight to actually get enough resveratrol to be effective, okay? So, and this brings us to a subject, we use it a lot. We've used it for years.
Because resveratrol's been being studied for years. And it's been one of the first big things they said for anti-aging years ago. It was actually, the research was looking so good on it, one of the big pharmaceutical companies actually bought the rights to make a synthetic resveratrol. It has never come out. And the last article I've seen on it, it's been 10, 12 years ago, basically how they were having trouble Because a lot of times they'll try to take a natural product and make it synthetic so you can patent it, and it just doesn't work like it should. So resveratrol has been out for years, and it does help with blood sugar control. That's one of the things it's been shown to do.
Helps with bone density.
It helps
with so many other things.
Bone density, a lot of things that are anti-aging.
Yeah.
It has some cancer preventative properties.
Right.
It's definitely bone density. It helps with blood sugar.
Right.
I've seen it help with hair loss in older women.
Yep.
It really is, and if you talk about anti-aging, resveratrol is one of the big things for anti-aging.
Yeah,
and we do have two different strengths, and both strengths are on sale this week.
We have a small, what we call a small one and a big one. And the small one's like 50 milligrams of actually the trans-resveratrol per capsule. The big one's 250. Occasionally you'll find somebody that gets then the really big doses of the resveratrol. It'll kind of give them a little bit of a tummy problem sometimes. So that's why, we sell both. I mean, I got some that take that big one, don't bother them whatsoever. Others try to take it and think, okay.
Not worth it.
Not worth it.
Yeah.
All right, got a question. Why is vitamin D so important for senior citizens? Why do I have to take so much of it?
Well, vitamin D is not just important for senior citizens.
No, it's important for everybody.
Okay, but here's why. We've got about 22 to 23,000 genes in our body that actually produce or code for what we call proteins. That makes the proteins. That's what keeps us going. If you need a cell redone, that your DNA that provides the gene to do that. Over 1,000 that we know of now, and there's probably more because the research is continuously going on. Over 1,000 of those genes require vitamin D to function correctly. So if you're low in vitamin D, you got over 1,000 of your different genes that aren't quite up to par.
And that's not even speaking of what it does for the immune system.
Right.
And there is no doubt that low vitamin D makes you get sick more often. It also increases chances of cancer. It has a lot of problems. And one of the reasons that they think it increases the cancer is because of the genes that it actually start activating because you don't have the D. So D, it is a part of bone density. It's not the only thing on bone density. So D plays such a role. When people are low in it, they hurt and ache all over. They have very low energy, low quality of life. So D is very important for so many things.
And y'all have a blood panel that you do that's very inexpensive just to check the vitamin D.
That's why, the blood panel is one way we say, we hadn't even really got to talk about it with anti-aging. For anti-aging,
that's where you start.
Make sure, that's where you start. Make sure all your underlying problems are taken care of.
Because here's the thing.
That's the start.
If you go out and say, okay, well, I'm going to buy some of this resveratrol, I'm going to take that. Okay, well, what if your vitamin D is low? What if your vitamin B12 is low? All right, well, yeah, the resveratrol can do some good, but it's going to do a whole lot more good if you got your D and your B12 and all those things going. So it's about putting everything together so that the body functions as a whole, not parts. We don't function as parts, we function as a whole. And so we have to have things working together, and it takes all these various things. That's why we do, like say, when we do a panel like our expanded panel, looks at all the systems. Thyroid, adrenals, B12, D, all that stuff. Looks at everything.
And it does look at sugar to make
sure.
sure.
It does look at sugar.
And it does look at insulin.
And insulin.
Yeah. So all that is checked, and that's the place to start when you want longevity and anti-aging. Is make sure the underlying. You have no underlying problem.
Right. It's like I take several supplements every day, but that's because when I did all my blood work, this is what I needed. And I'll be 66 this year, and I haven't felt this good in years. Years. What, 7 years now that I've been under y'all's tutelage and guidance.
Right. We've been doing this about 7 years.
Yeah. So anyway, next week we will continue our talk about anti-aging.
Right. Because it's so much about it, we didn't even get to part of what we were going to talk about today. But
we haven't even scratched the surface.
Exactly. And then there's the skin and what affects the skin health, and collagen, how to keep it from breaking down, because collagen breakdown is what makes wrinkles.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you again for being with us this morning. You can also go to doctorsnutrition.com for more information, as well as their Facebook page. It's got all kinds of information on there for you. So join us again next Monday morning at 9 o'clock for another edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show.
For more information on highlighting your business and services on Healthy Living South Mississippi, contact Jim Tabor at 896-1313.